Well, we're already at week 12 of the NFL season. Can you believe it? Just flying by as it always seems to do. A lot of good games on tap for this week. Want to get to a few of them now. It's a unique week, of course, because Thanksgiving falls on Thursday. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday of the year because we get a heavy dose of NFL football. This year's no exception. One of the Thanksgiving games in particular caught my eye. The Houston Texans going on the road to take on the Detroit Lions. Houston's currently installed as a 3-point favorite on BETDAQ. What Houston Texans team are we going to see? The team that we've seen throughout most of the season. I mean, they're tied with Atlanta for the best record in the NFL. They've only lost one game. They've been great on both sides of the ball. They're third in the NFL in points scored, fourth in points allowed. Or are we going to see the Texans team we saw last week, or at least the Texans defense we saw last week, that was shredded by the worst offense in the NFL? The Jacksonville Jaguars, who ranked, coming into the game last week, ranked 32nd in the NFL, last in yards per game, pass yards per game, points per game. The Texans had already played the Jags this year, held them to 150 total yards and 7 points. That Jacksonville Jaguars team racked up over 350 passing yards and 37 points on this Houston Texans defense. What do you make of that? I know Jacksonville had a different quarterback, Chad Henne, after Blaine Gabbert was hurt early in the game, but still, should the Chad Henne-led Jaguars offense be able to go up and down the field on the Texans like that? You sure wouldn't think so. And this week, the Texans go on the road to face the Lions for all their faults. And the Lions have many faults. They're 4-6 this year. They've been very unimpressive. They can move the football. Detroit is number 1 in the NFL in pass yards per game, number 2 in total yards per game. This is not the Jacksonville Jaguars. So only 4 days after looking awful against the worst offense in the league, Houston's going to have to go and play one of the best offenses in the league. What are we going to see? What do you expect? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. A lot of people, I guess, expect Detroit to have some success because Houston is only a 3-point favorite here. That struck me as a little low. Even after Houston struggled last week, I still expected them to be around a 4.5-point favorite in this game. Remember, Detroit, in their 10 games this season, they've won 4 games, but they've only been impressive really in 1 game. A blowout win on the road in Jacksonville, that same Jaguars team that hung 37 on the Texans. And the rest of Detroit's games, even in their 3 other wins, they were unimpressive. So I don't have much faith in Detroit, and we know that Detroit losing on Thanksgiving is a holiday tradition. They have lost 8 straight games on Thanksgiving Day. We'll see if Houston can make it 9 in a row on Thursday. I'll be watching. If you'd have told me 5 days ago that if you'd have said Houston -3 on the road in Detroit, I'd have said sell the car, mortgage the house, put as much as you can afford on the Texans. But after what we saw last week, I don't know. It's shaken my faith in the Texans a little bit, at least for the short term, on a short week against a really good Detroit Lions offense. So we'll see. Not sure what to expect in that game. The other 2 Thanksgiving games, Washington, Dallas, New England, and the New York Jets. Of course, we'll have full video previews for every game, as we always do here on BETDAQ NFL. I want to talk about a few of the other games this week. Now, BETDAQ has not yet released the lines for any of the Sunday games. The lines, of course, for the Thursday games are all up. But still, I want to talk about a few of these Sunday games, starting with the Pittsburgh Steelers going on the road to take on the Cleveland Browns. Now, as I said, a line on BETDAQ has not yet been released yet. The Vegas line is currently pick on this game, which is shocking to me. I mean, Cleveland is terrible. I know what we saw out of the Pittsburgh offense last Sunday night. That's what I expected to see out of that offense. I bet on Baltimore. I lost with that bet. And that loss, it was a half-point loss. I had Baltimore -3.5. They won by 3. It served as a reminder to me. Oh, yeah, I thought watching that game, even though the Steelers were bad on offense. And coming into that game, that was my big rationale. I really liked Baltimore, and I said, the Steelers with Byron Leftwich are not going to be able to move the ball, and Ben Roethlisberger throwing the ball downfield is the bread and butter of that offense, on and on. And that's true. And the Steelers, they weren't able to move the ball. But they're so good on defense. You forget that a great defense is the equalizer. A great defense that can shut down just about any offense. Baltimore came into the game last week 4th in the NFL in points per game. And Pittsburgh, it didn't matter that Pittsburgh couldn't move the ball. Now, Pittsburgh, it did matter because they lost the game, but they clamped down on that Baltimore offense all night. If Baltimore hadn't returned a punt, they wouldn't scored a touchdown. I mean, that offense looked like they could have played 10 or 15 quarters without scoring on the Pittsburgh defense. So it just served as a reminder. And this week they go on the road to play the Cleveland Browns, to the Steelers. And not only will Ben Roethlisberger not play, Byron Leftwich is not going to play in this game because he cracked a couple of ribs last week. So Charlie Batch, the Steelers' third-string quarterback, the veteran Charlie Batch, is slated to go. And apparently they're going to sign another guy off the street. So they probably won't be able to score much on Cleveland. They probably won't be able to move the ball, no question about it. But still, Is Cleveland going to be able to score at all on this Pittsburgh Steelers defense? I don't know. And when I see the line at only pick here, boy, it's very tempting. It's tempting for me to bet on Pittsburgh because I do have great faith in that defense going up against an offense that has been bad this season, the Cleveland Browns, a rookie quarterback in Brandon Weeden. The Charlie Batch-led Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, might be able to pull out a road win. Now, I wouldn't be saying that. It's not like I have faith in the Steelers against just anybody. I mean, I bet against them last week, as we said, and until Roethlisberger comes back, if they play a functional offense, I'm going to have real doubts about this Steelers team, but I don't define the Browns offense as functional, so I think, have an early lean towards Pittsburgh in a pick'em game on the road against Cleveland. Now, maybe the best game of this Sunday, the Atlanta Falcons going on the road to take on the Tampa Bay Bucks. Atlanta tied with the Houston Texans for the best record in the NFL, but Tampa, they've been playing just about as well as anybody in the league here recently. The Bucks, you got to be impressed with this team, especially on offense. They started the season off 1-3, but they've won 5 out of the last 6, and just really clicking on offense. What's gotten into Josh Freeman? I guess the acquisition of Vincent Jackson was bigger than we were giving it credit for in the beginning of the season. Excuse me, having a little trouble getting my words out here, I guess. But anyway, since Tampa's bye, before the bye, the first 4 games they were unimpressive on offense. Since the bye, I mean, they've come out and they've been as good as any offense in the NFL, and Vincent Jackson has been a big part of that. Not only what he's done for them in terms of making plays himself downfield, but he just opens up that whole offense. Mike Williams on the other side, a guy who has been Tampa's #1 wide receiver for the last couple of years. He's now facing more single coverage than he's seen since he's been in the NFL, so he's having a great season. Doug Martin, the rookie running back from Boise State, has been a revelation. And the Atlanta Falcons, even though they've only lost 1 game, they've looked very vulnerable in several games recently, most notably last week when they really should have lost that game to the Arizona Cardinals. But that wasn't a new thing. In the last month, a couple of other times at home, Atlanta, they almost lost to the Oakland Raiders. They almost lost to the Carolina Panthers. They go on the road this week to take on a team that is better than those teams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know. I lean towards I lean towards Tampa in this game. Again, a line has not yet been released on BETDAQ. The line has been hovering around pick in Vegas these last couple of days, opened with Atlanta as a 1.5-point favorite. As long as that line stays around pick, as long as Tampa is not having to lay a field goal or more, I don't know. I think the Tampa Bay Bucks might be a better team at this point in time than Atlanta, even though they're 3 games behind in the standings. Another game that really caught my eye this week, the San Francisco 49ers, who were so impressive last night and just stomping the Chicago Bears. San Francisco goes on the road this week to face the New Orleans Saints. Now, New Orleans is back from the dead. The Saints were 0-4. They've now brought it all the way back to 5-5. And I've said for the last couple of weeks, even though I like this New Orleans team, I've said they've dug themselves too deep a hole. The reason is because of the schedule. After this game, the Saints have road games against the New York Giants, the Atlanta Falcons, the Dallas Cowboys. They just have a tough schedule ahead, the Saints do, but I don't know. I'm starting to buy in. I'm starting to think that even these tough games, these teams aren't going to be able to beat the Saints. San Francisco, a 2.5-point favorite in Vegas in this game. We mentioned the line has not yet been released on BETDAQ. New Orleans had gone 30-some-odd games without being a home underdog before their last home game against the Atlanta Falcons when they were a short home underdog, and now consecutive games in which they're a home underdog. We saw what New Orleans did to the Falcons. We know how dangerous this team is at the Superdome, and even though San Francisco looked so good last night against the Chicago Bears, Colin Kaepernick, what about that guy? I think Jim Harbaugh has a full-blown quarterback controversy on his hands now. How do you sit Kaepernick on the bench after what we saw to him last night? I mean, Alex Smith, I know he's been pretty good over this last year and a half, but he never looks as good as Kaepernick looked last night. So it'll be very interesting to see who Harbaugh is going to start at quarterback this week on the road in New Orleans. Be very interesting to see what this line does over the rest of the week. Remember, in Vegas it opened to San Francisco -2.5. Hasn't yet been released on BETDAQ. We haven't heard yet who's going to start at quarterback for San Francisco. It's just, this line could go a lot of different directions throughout the week, and I don't know. This is a very interesting game. I have an early lean towards the New Orleans Saints. I think that what we saw last night out of San Francisco might make this a good sell high time with the San Francisco 49ers, might make the Saints a good value here. Even though the Saints, you'd think that public opinion of them was really high too with the run they've been on. But after watching San Francisco play last night, I think a lot of people are going to be very hesitant to bet against that team right now. Well, another game, certainly an excellent game. Like I told you, just this week is game after game. A lot of great games on the slate here. The Green Bay Packers going on the road to face the New York Giants. This is a rematch of last year's playoff game. Of course, that game was in Green Bay, and the Giants spoiled Green Bay's season. Green Bay was the number 1 seed in the NFC after going 15-1 in the regular season. Giants just went in there and beat them up. New York Giants currently installed as a 2.5-point favorite out in Vegas in this game. A little bit of Giants line movement in this game. They opened as a 1.5-point favorite, has gone to 2.5 and even 3 in a couple of spots. We mentioned the line has not yet been released on BETDAQ. Green Bay has just been not themselves this year on offense, or maybe this is just the new normal for the Green Bay Packers. I know they've been winning games recently, including last week against the Detroit Lions, but what do you make of this offense? Last year, they led the NFL in scoring at 35 points per game. Aaron Rodgers named the league MVP. This year, they've only scored more than 31 points one time. And just seems like week after week we say the same thing. Well, not able to find their rhythm, don't look like they're quite themselves. Well, at some point, it's not that they're not quite themselves. This is them. They are themselves, and what they are is just not as good as they were the last couple of years, at least on offense. The defense has actually improved over what they were last season. Why is that? Is it the absence of Greg Jennings? Is it more than that? Is Aaron Rodgers struggling a little bit? Not a whole lot of people blaming Rodgers, but it's something. There's something to it. Going on the road against a Giants defense that has really struggled lately. If Rodgers doesn't find it now, if he doesn't get into a rhythm now, you have to wonder, is he ever going to find it? For some reason, I like Green Bay on the road in this game. I just got finished saying how much Green Bay struggled on offense this year, but I've been very, very unimpressed with the New York Giants defense the last couple of times I've seen them play. And Eli Manning has hit a little bit of a slump. And I mentioned the Green Bay Packers playing better on defense. I just have a feeling, I don't count the Giants out of it by any means in terms of the big picture, not even the Super Bowl. They are still in first place in the NFC East. The NFC East is a weak division this year. The Giants have been losing some games recently, and I don't know, for some reason, an early lean here towards the Green Bay Packers on the road. We shall see, of course. A lot of the week left. I change my mind on these games a lot of times, 2 or 3 times throughout the week, and I usually don't make any final decisions until Friday or Saturday. But I do have an early lean towards Green Bay in that game. Another game I want to mention just because it's 2 teams that are absolutely falling apart. And I just thought it was laughable that Philadelphia is favored right now over anybody, but they are, at least in Vegas. Line has not yet been released, as we mentioned on BETDAQ. I'm talking about the Monday night game. The Carolina Panthers, who only have 2 wins this season, going on the road to face Philadelphia, who only have 3 wins this season. But worse than that, Philadelphia has only covered 1 time all year. It's incredible that they're actually a 2.5-point favorite in Las Vegas in this game. Michael Vick expected not to play again. Nick Foles, what we saw out of him last week in that 31-6 blowout loss to the Washington Redskins. Explain it to me. Hey, listen, I know Carolina's been really bad. I know that Carolina has been a low-character team, the type of team that seems to hang their head. When the going gets tough, they check out. It probably all starts with their quarterback, Cam Newton. At least that's becoming the rap on Newton. They might have a lame duck head coach in there and Ron Rivera. I get it. I'm not a fan. I'm not a believer in the Carolina Panthers either. But Philadelphia, they're unraveling just like last year's Tampa Bay Bucks. Remember last year Tampa Bay lost their final 10 games and were 1-9 against the spread in those games. We're seeing that type of thing out of Philadelphia. It's unfolding right before our eyes, and I guess some people just don't believe it because, again, they're favored this week. I don't care they're playing the Panthers. I don't care that this is at home in Philadelphia. This team, this is beyond the point of rally together, backs against the wall, come out fighting this time. No. They did that a couple of weeks ago. They held the players-only meetings and all that. They've pulled out all the desperation stops, Andy Reid firing Juan Castillo. All that's already been done. What the Eagles are now is a terrible team. Guys are already making off-season plans. I don't know. We'll see. Again, a lot of time left in the week, but I lean towards Carolina on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're giving me points, if you're letting me bet against the Eagles and giving me points, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Jacksonville at this point. I'll take that. I'll jump on it. And so we'll see. Again, plenty of time, almost a full week between now and the time that game will be played. But did want to mention it because I just could not believe that the Philadelphia Eagles were favored over anybody right now. Well, anyway, those are the games that caught my eye this week. Now, as always, we'll be putting up full video previews of every one of these games here on BETDAQ NFL. Thanksgiving is Thursday, so we'll have the video previews of those games up on the site tomorrow. Again, Houston, Detroit, that's the one game. If If you'd have told me 5 days ago Houston was only going to be a 3-point favorite on the road in Detroit, I would not have believed it. But now, boy, I don't even know if I'm going to do anything in that game. It remains to be seen. We only have about 36 hours to think about it, I guess. Anyway, until then, for BETDAQ NFL, I'm John Arnette.